Howdy, partner. Welcome to Howdy, partner, a weekly Twitch series highlighting AWS partner network partners that have built innovative solutions validated by AWS solutions architects. My name is Jeff Graham, and I'm partner solutions architect here at AWS. And today I'm excited to learn more about PrinterLogic by Vasion, a solution that is helping healthcare organizations modernize their print architecture. But before we begin, let me bring in my co-host.
Hey,
How's it
Jeff.
going, Simon? How's it going?
Pretty good.
How are you?
I'm Simon Panek. I'm also a partner solutions architect. Excited to be here today to talk to PrinterLogic and hear a little bit of what they do and how they do it.
Yes. For those Howdy Partner regulars, you'll probably recognize Simon. What episode is this? How many episodes have you done so far? Excuse me.
I think I've been involved with 5 now, and it's interesting each time. They're a little different, but they're always interesting to see exactly how our partners are doing, what they're doing, and the services they're using from AWS.
That's good to know. And thank you for being my co-host. Help me through this. Um, for our viewers, do we have any viewers in healthcare or healthcare adjacent field, or anyone who recently had a hospital or doctor's visit? I myself just recently had a doctor's visit, and I'm surprised by the significant amount of paperwork involved, from the intake form to prescription documents to discharge paperwork. And I realized managing this extensive print needs efficiently is crucial for smooth operation in a healthcare setting. And that's where PrinterLogic steps in. PrinterLogic is a SaaS solution built on the AWS that streamlines printing processes across an organization. With PrinterLogic, you can ensure that your clinicians or admin staff have the necessary tools to carry out their daily tasks in a secure manner. Today, we'll be joined by Ken and Matt to discuss how PrinterLogic has a treatment for your printing pains. And without further ado, let me bring on Ken and Matt.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. I'll let you introduce yourself, starting with Ken.
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Ken Mickelson, and I am a senior product manager for Vasion. I've been at Vasion for about 8 years now, so it's been a little bit. I started out as a system engineer, so I was able to get that firsthand experience of working with customers on more technical, kind of in-depth way, and eventually moved to product from there, and kind of help to make some of the products we'll be talking about today. So excited to be here.
Cool. Glad to have you. And Matt?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So I'm Matt Majewski. I'm kind of our healthcare subject matter expert here at Vasion, supporting PrinterLogic. And in terms of my start, I've been at Vasion for 5 years now, focusing mostly in the healthcare space these past 3 years. I started as an engineer in my previous background. My first job out of school was with Cisco as a systems engineer, and I made the transition over to the business development sales, kind of the equation. But happy to be with you guys and look forward to having a good discussion today.
Good. Now, I know we have a lot to get into, but I do want to learn a little bit more about yourselves before we jump into the meat of things. So could each one of you tell us, what drew you to work for Vasion, and what are some of the favorite things working for them? And this time we'll start with Matt.
Yeah, so what drew me to working for Vasion is, originally we have multiple solutions now, but the only solution we had when I first got hired was PrinterLogic, which we're going to dive into today. And it just seems stupid simple. And I was like, why wouldn't any customer want to have this? It solves a non-sexy problem, but it solves a very fundamental problem that organizations typically have. And that's what drew me over here, is that the technology was edgy in terms of the problem it was solving. It wasn't the sexiest thing in the world, but it solved a real problem that I thought could help customers. And that's why I made the jump to come over here 5 years ago. And really the thing that keeps me here is, we constantly innovate on the product. We're constantly pushing new things out to our customer base and listening to our customers. And it always creates, different conversations that we can have, and creates different internal conversations and spurs, collaborative discussion going forward.
Good. Okay. Nice to hear that. Ken?
Yeah. So on my side, I came from IT. I started out as a help desk technician, and eventually, before I came over to Vasion, I was a network engineer. I managed a nationwide network, and so I was kind of in the weeds there from the IT technical aspect. And our CTO actually reached out to me initially, just saying that there was an opportunity. I looked into it, but was pretty quickly impressed with the amount of innovation that was doing. And really, kind of what Matt was saying, the reason I've stayed here for so long is that we're constantly moving, constantly changing and learning. And as we'll get into it, we'll see that, just kind of that basic idea of printing is not at all the only thing that we do anymore at this point. So it's a very wide breadth of functionality that we can provide.
Okay. And I'm looking at the comments, and sounds like some of the viewers are resonate with what Matt said in terms of sexy versus non-sexy. But change the way people do things to save time and money. I think as we all want to do that, organizations. So spot on. But there also another question in the chat before we get into things. Why would you go from engineering to sales?
Why do you think? So I can give some context to that. So at Cisco, I was a systems engineer and supported a bunch of different account managers. And I always looked at my paycheck compared to theirs, and I felt like I was doing all the work and they were getting all the credit. So I honestly think that better salespeople are born from the engineering ranks because you actually understand your product and you have some credibility and know what it is that you're talking about, instead of just being the sales guy that everyone hates dealing with.
Okay.
I hope that's not the experience or the vibe that I give off here, but I felt that being an engineer and having that experience and then taking that into a sales role makes me more effective as a seller, makes me understand my customers and their challenges much more deeper.
All valid points. I tend to agree. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I will let you jump into the meat of it. We bring a presentation. And the floor is yours.
Perfect. And let's see, we'll get my slides going here. And Matt, if you wanted to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, we can do that. So we're gonna the meat of what we're going to talk about today is going to be more in the healthcare realm and showing some integration on the EMR side, which is obviously paramount in any healthcare organization, as to how we can efficiently process information coming from patient records and getting to a printed form. Because let's face it, healthcare organizations, as good as they are and cutting edge on the clinical side, in terms of back office processes, not always on the cutting edge of what's being done. So printing is still happening all the time. There's still huge paper volumes being done in healthcare organizations, and that's where our goal is to help simplify that and provide kind of a standardized technology to streamline that over time and try to avoid printing later on with some of the other solutions that we have. So when I'm talking to healthcare customers, these are the big three things that we're focused on. And I'll hit these really quick. So cost reduction, this is paramount in healthcare environments, and comes in two ways: giving time back to IT admins for not having to deal with mundane things like managing print queues, pushing out print queues to end user devices, and troubleshooting printing tickets. All of that is a burden, both on the admins and on the support team. And our goal is to reduce that and give that time back so that people can be more efficient in the IT world. Security, this probably comes as no surprise, but everything in healthcare is going to have a security aspect to it because we're dealing with patient and confidential information. So providing a mechanism that architecturally is inherently secure on the print side, but also facilitating some additional security mechanism for printed media is what we're trying to accomplish with our customers. And if anybody is in the print space or deals with Microsoft print servers, about 2 years ago, you probably saw Print Nightmare come down the pike, disrupted printing for a lot of organizations by exposing a security risk. And also the remediation to that was really elevating privileges for end users, which pose another security risk just to install print queues. So we fundamentally transform how printing is done and look to simplify that infrastructure. And in that same thread, one of the things that we'll show you here is printing in healthcare has a client-side component, a front-end component from traditional end users. It also has a back-end component, as I alluded to before. So our goal is to help customers to have a single instance to manage the print queue, and then present that print queue, both on the front-end side and on the back-end side through integrations with EMR and back office systems. On the architecture and how we make all this work, really it's fundamentally simple in terms of the process. So we have a cloud management component that is hosted in AWS, so a multi-tenant architecture. Each individual customer has their own secure URL that they would access their environment from. And in that environment, you would have all the different print queues that are inside of your organization. So if you think about a healthcare organization, typically each hospital is going to have a print server. maybe even a couple for redundancy. You go out and have affiliate clinics. They may operate off of a centralized print server. The whole idea is that there are multiple and disparate points of management to affect printing. And in a print server architecture, print server goes down, printing ceases to happen. So one small failure of a VM can have a catastrophic consequence for a healthcare organization when they can't print. So we provide a centralized point to manage all that, and then provide a distributed mechanism for the actual printed media. And this is where our value prop really comes into play. So PrinterLogic, our goal is to provide, a centrally managed direct IP print architecture. And the way that direct IP architecture is facilitated is through a client that we deploy to the end user environment. And the beauty of this solution, in comparison to, I'll call them legacy print environments dealing with print servers, they were primarily geared towards just operating a pure Windows world, which most healthcare organizations still operate in predominantly Windows, but more and more are making the transition to things like thin clients that run a Linux operating system using virtualization, whether that's cloud hosted or on-prem VDI, and even going into things like Chrome OS mobile devices that need to be printed from. So there are more and more use cases where printing is coming up, and our goal is to help simplify that. So to do that, the PrinterLogic, the client portion of the PrinterLogic solution is adaptable regardless of the end user operating system that needs to be printed from. So same user experience, same management console, and not having to have disparate points of management or different processes to affect printing going forward when you look at the entire organization as a whole. So once you get these components in place, from a security point of view, printing is all happening direct IP. So wherever the PrinterLogic client is installed, direct to the target printer over TCP 9100, there is no data that is funneled back to our cloud environment. So from a security perspective, we're not capturing directly the PHI. We're not hosting that data inside of our environment. It's all staying local on your network. Now, that being said, our cloud environment that has a well-architected status, also we have a SOC 2 Type 2 report and an ISO 27001 cert. So the data is still highly secure, but point is we're still not capturing in that PHI inside of our system directly. One of the other things here too, and this comes in, if you flip back to that one real quick, this comes in when we're talking about security of printed information, is how we need to identify users. The easiest way to do that is through an identity provider, and that's where you see the cloud to cloud, the communication using SAML 2.0 and SCIM provisioning for the user provisioning in there. So to identify users, we can hook into all the different IDP services that are out there: Azure AD, Okta, Google Identity, Ping, really anything that can utilize the SAML 2.0 protocol and support SCIM provisioning, we can hook into and authenticate users effectively. Now you can go to the next slide.
Perfect. I think we had a question too, real quick, to explain some acronyms. Specifically called out PHI, which stands for Protected Health Information. And it's just any data, or private health, it might be private instead of protected, I don't recall. But essentially it's data that has to do about your health that the hospital might store, normally in electronic medical record software. And so what we're saying in that case is that we're making sure that doesn't come up to our cloud and we're not hosting that information. Instead, it stays local to the health system.
Exactly. And I think I saw another one about what does the ISO certification mean. ISO is basically just a security compliance framework that we adhere to in how we built our services. So there are a lot of different security compliance frameworks that are out there, security certifications that, different organizations, depending on who you're talking to, put different weight in as they evaluate solutions and how they're architected.
There was one other comment earlier that Jeff brought up on screen briefly, but just the viewer was saying how frustrating it is when medical staff are being distracted from their primary functions when things like printers don't work. So like, it's really important even for the end user, like the patients themselves, just keep medical staff focused on their primary tasks.
And that's where it's not too far of a stretch to say, if we can simplify the printing process, we can actually impact patient care. I think to that point, seconds matter, minutes matter. And if a clinician is distracted with having to troubleshoot a print issue and something that is required in their workflow for whatever portion of the process they're in with a patient, that is a lot of time in aggregate if there are fundamental issues with the print architecture. So again, overall goal is to simplify that, enhance the clinician experience, and then by doing that, provide a better product from the healthcare organization in terms of patient satisfaction. On this screen, I covered this already, but this kind of illustrates the point of this is a platform for managing print architecture, and ultimately, if you look at some of the other systems we have, managing information both in a digital and a printed format. And we have a lot of different integrations on the end user side that I already alluded to with the different operating systems and devices that we can support printing from. Also in the virtual environment, whether it's a desktop as a service or, hosted VDI, published app, published desktop type environments, those are always present when you're looking at integrations with the back-end electronic medical record system, like an Epic or an Oracle Cerner or Oracle Health, I believe now it's called. Those things are fundamental to being able to affect printing in those environments, because they're kind of the secure jumping point, going into those EHR systems. So working very well across the stack in terms of end user use cases. And then, like we mentioned before, we're also agnostic from a print manufacturer. So in healthcare, there are a lot of specialty printers. There are label printers, thermal printers, barcode printers, anything under the sun really can exist in a healthcare environment. And our goal is to support that. And we do that through, when we're talking about front-end printing, using a Type 3 Windows sign driver to be able to, or Type 3 sign driver to be able to, do our magic, if you will. And on the back-end side, as Ken will talk to later, we do this in a driverless fashion, so you don't have to worry about specific driver configurations, and we can securely deliver and accurately deliver print jobs from the back end.
Does that mean that whoever is actually doing the printing, regardless if they're on their phone or a tablet or computer, the experience is the same for them, or is there a little bit of difference depending on what they're doing?
It's basically the same. So on the mobile app, you would have, or on the mobile device, you'd have a mobile app that would have a slightly different experience, but it wouldn't be any dissimilar from how they would print normally on a native iOS app.
And I think a key piece to tie into that as well, we're going to talk about features like off-network printing in a little bit, where it allows you to print across the internet securely without the need for a VPN. And to kind of tie to what you were saying, not only can you print from any of those devices, but more or less you can print no matter where you are physically as well. And from a user experience, it's the same. They just hit file print, it prints, and in the back end, there's this whole cool thing that's going on that we'll talk about, but the user experience remains the same regardless.
Cool. I think your stuff was coming up next. Since you're since you're driving, if you want to show, just kind of the interface in there a little bit and how this is laid out, I think that would be helpful, so we don't have to flip back and forth between screens.
Yeah, good call. So what we're looking at here is the admin console that the administrator that's using PrinterLogic would see. And on the left side, we would have the tree structure where you can build out the folders for the locations, or
Ken,
really, yes, go ahead.
real quick, we're gonna request to make the font just bigger.
Let me see if I can just do that.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, we have the console here, and you have a tree structure that you can build out in the way that's most logical for your organization. And then there would be actual printer objects that populate that tree. And within each of those, you can configure all the settings that you would need for deploying out to your end users, or to make sure they have the right settings. That ranges anywhere from the name of the printer, informational things like the location of where it could be found, as well as just some information on if it supports color or duplex. Additionally, too, we can set the IP address or DNS name of where we're going to send the job. If we want to use the LPR or RAW protocols for actually sending the file to the printer, and then some additional settings for getting status back on the job. And then most importantly, what Matt was talking about is you can choose the driver, right? And so this is where we can support that agnostic printing to any printer, because we can use the native drivers for that device. And once you have uploaded it, which we can talk about ways you can do that in a second, that driver is always going to be available in the dropdown. So if we have another printer that uses the same driver, we just choose from what's already there. And then lastly here, when we get to the deploy tab, we can choose how we're going to deploy this out to our users. So this can either be an automatic thing where we can deploy based on an Active Directory or an IDP user group, or the IP of their computer. So as an example for that, if in a healthcare environment, if they're logging in on multiple carts, or there's a thin client over in this one floor and they move up to a second floor, there's a different thin client. When they do that, we can recognize that their IP address has changed and make sure they have the printers that are appropriate for their location. So this would be the automatic method for deploying these queues out to users. But additionally, there is also a portal where an end user could come to this page. They can get a nice floor plan map of the location where they're at, along with a list of the printers. And then when they want to install a printer, they just click on install printer, and the agent takes it from there. So that's the basics around how you would set up a print queue and then deploy it out to end users. But as I mentioned, that's really just kind of the beginning, or just kind of touching at the basics. Additionally, too, I talked about off-network printing, where we can print across the internet. That's also configured within this console here, and it's pretty simple. For a specific print queue, we would just turn on the off-network printing, choose a route that we want that job to take. Oh, I didn't save my settings, so it didn't go in there. But and then that's it, right? And so now when I deploy this print queue to users, that job is going to route across the internet. And again, I'll kind of come back around to how that's actually accomplished. But I want to really point out that this is where all that work is done, and it's a really easy to use and simple, straightforward way to administer everything centrally.
Okay, we have a question in the comment section.
Mm-hmm.
So how can a hospital set up hundreds of printers in a bulk fashion?
Great question.
Seems like a lot of work to select a driver for each printer.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So there's a couple ways that we can do that. The first would be if you have existing Microsoft Print servers, we can use this tool, which I haven't opened in a while, so hopefully it'll load pretty quickly here. But it did. Let me pull it over. So with this, you can point this tool to the Windows Print server that you're wanting to target. And once we've connected to it, it's going to populate this with all of the print queues that already exist on that server. And then you can either select all of them or some of them and choose to put them in a folder. And the benefit of this particular tool is that it will look at the existing drivers that you already have on that print server, and it'll pull those over as well as with the existing default settings. So once we've imported those, they're going to automatically show up in this list with the driver, with the IP address of where it's supposed to go to, and everything else that you might need on that. The alternative to that is we can use a CSV using the data manager. So you can insert, update, delete, or export any of the data that's already within the tool, and do that as a max or a mass update or mass change.
Yeah, a couple of other things to point out there in terms of I've dealt with a lot of customers, and they, let's say a given healthcare organization has 5,000 print queues out in their environment. So pre-positioning everything, as Ken just demonstrated in our system, by leveraging that utility to grab all that configuration that exists on the print server, that's kind of step number one. What we can also do is when you push out the client, there's a setting that we have in our system that will allow the client to recognize that there are print queues already installed on that Windows machine, for instance, and they are mapped to a specific print server. So if we know in our management system that we've imported that same print queue from that print server, and now the PrinterLogic client has been pushed to that Windows endpoint, it'll be smart enough to auto-convert that server-based queue now to a direct IP queue, and then delete the server-based queue. Right. So in practice, what that actually means is, without having to recreate all these different deployment policies and do all that, we can simply take ownership of all print queues that are out there on the given devices, out in the field, just by virtue of importing all the print queues, managing them in our system, and pushing the PrinterLogic client out. And then from there, any updates in our system that you make to the driver, to the profiles, to even the IP address or just the name of the print queue, those automatically get propagated to the end user device by virtue of us now managing that print queue.
Right.
So it's very simple to drop in, kind of as a hard cutover, if you will. Obviously, you do this in stages as you roll something into production, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Is what I'm trying to portray with pushing everything back out again manually.
Yeah, good call out. I also saw a question on if you have the fleet of printers already using a driver, can we update that? And you absolutely can. So there's a couple ways to get to this repository here. And within this section, you're going to get a list of just the drivers that you have uploaded, right? So they're not necessarily associated with the printers here. But from this tool, we could upload a new driver or replace it. And that replace is where we would perform that particular action. So I won't do it right now because I'd have to actually have a driver, which I don't have ready. But you would just be able to switch that out. And then, as Matt was saying, with that end user client that's out on the end user workstations, when it checks in, it's going to say, "Oh, I have a new driver I'm supposed to have." It'll automatically download and install that for the user.
So one thing that also comes up too, just stay on that screen for a second. So we have a lot of customers that they have a lot of disparate print servers, and even leveraging something like a HP Universal PCL6 that you see in the list, or PostScript driver, whatever it is, they'll have multiple versions of that same driver. So if you look at the driver version, it'll just constantly be updated, and it'll be the same driver and construct, just multiple versions iterated through it. And from a troubleshooting perspective, not having that that congruency in the configuration and not knowing which clients may have which version of the driver that could be affecting how they're printing to that creates just a management nightmare. So you can use this system in that fashion that Ken was just mentioning, to clean up all those different versions, extraneous versions of that same driver, just by kind of replacing them with an existing driver in the database until you get to one consolidated version that's applicable to all of your HP printers or Xerox printers or Canon printers, whatever the manufacturer of choice is in your fleet.
Awesome. And I think there's another question. What happens if you pick the wrong driver for a printer? So the recovery for that would be pretty simple. If it's just one particular queue we need to change this on, we just come to that print queue, choose the new driver and save it. And then that change will be picked up the next time that client agent checks in. By default, that's every 4 hours or when the user logs into their machine. And so at the longest, it's going to be that. But then you can also either prompt the user to refresh their configuration with the icon in their bottom right tray, or technically you can do it remotely via PowerShell as well to push out a change that way. So also relating to our kind of core product, there's also in-depth reporting around everything that is printed by your users. In the individual print job sense, we can see, I've printed 3 jobs today. And then along with that, we can include, who sent the job. We can pull data from Active Directory or IDPs to include, the job title, who their manager is, department, all that, attributes from those identity providers. Which printer they printed to, how many pages in color versus black and white, duplex, etc. And just gives that in-depth view into what's happening within your environment when your users are printing. So anything else here, Matt, that you would want to talk about before we move to maybe secure printing?
One thing I'll just say on the reporting aspect, again, where this comes in more into practice of how to utilize this, a lot of customers don't have, when they're migrating from a print server environment to something like PrinterLogic, it's sort of like firewall rules in terms of print queues, where they don't know if one's being used, so they don't want to delete it for fear that someone's using it, just like deleting a firewall rule and then breaking connectivity for somebody. So all of the print queues that exist on a print server, they have no idea of knowing if they're actually being utilized in kind of a consolidated reporting fashion. So what this enables you to do in just one use case is when the tool runs and you let it run for 3 months, 6 months, you can then pull a consolidated report of all the printers in your fleet and see which printers have been printed to in that time period. And if there are no print jobs destined to a particular print queue, it's a pretty clear indication that that printer is no longer in service. You don't need to maintain that print queue, and you don't need to be, charged a license for that print queue either. So it gives you a clear roadmap and some actual data to go on to clean up your print fleet and clean up the print queue configurations that you have to manage. And that's only attainable by having the data to actually back up those decisions.
Awesome. Yeah, that's true. And just getting that visibility into the environment when it's not normally possible is a huge value add for that. Um, Awesome. Yeah. So one of the additional features that we have with the Vasion offering is secure printing. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's when a user kicks off a print job, or when you start printing from Epic or Oracle Health or a similar system. Normally, obviously, that's just going to come out and print. But if you have protected health information or anything secure that you don't want left out just sitting on the paper tray, either waiting for someone to walk over, or which is something that happens fairly often, where someone will send a job and then just forget about it and never go pick it up. Instead, with secure print, when that job gets kicked off, it's going to be held until the user walks up to the printer and they can swipe a badge or use the mobile app to scan a QR code. There's several different release mechanisms, but then when they do so, then the job will print so that it's in their hands. So not only does it add security to the environment by not leaving that sensitive information out, but it also reduces cost, because surprisingly, people do print stuff and then don't go pick it up. So in this case, that file never would be printed. And what is it, Matt, like 20% reduction in print jobs?
Yeah, I worked with a customer where we were estimating that their print volume by implementing secure print was going to reduce by 5%, which is on the conservative fashion. And by doing that, they were going to save $400,000 in aggregate over the year, because they were charged, a penny per black and white and a 4.5 cents for color. So if you look at even just a 5% reduction in print volume, and to Ken's point, that's a conservative estimate that could be upwards of 20%. That has hard dollars associated with it. And this is an easy way not only to provide additional security around PHI, around protecting confidential information, but also recouping those costs and not having to pay those per page, per click charges at the printer for every page that spits out of the tray.
Right.
Wow. So I know, Matt, you mentioned well-architected framework, and then one of them is sustainability here at AWS. And besides the printing, the dollar cost, like saving paper that's not being used helps the earth in itself. So that's another sustainability issue. But
Exactly.
we do have another question in the comment section. Does this include some type of security and communication with the printer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right now, it doesn't. The only real technology that I'm aware of that offers essentially encryption all the way to the printer is IPPS, the Internet Printing Protocol Secure. I actually don't know what the S stands for, but it's the secure version of IPP. And we don't support that currently. I know that it's something that we are actively investigating. As far as, for one, being able to deploy IPP queues to end user workstations, but then also product we haven't quite gotten to yet, output management to be able to receive jobs via IPP. So that would be the main method for that we don't support currently. That said, with off-network printing, the job is encrypted all the way down to inside the customer network, and then it's just that hop between the internal service and the printer that is potentially not encrypted. So yeah, so that's a little look at secure print. The other feature that I've alluded to a little bit already is off-network printing, and I have a diagram I wanted to bring up to help talk about that. Very basic, but I think it'll get the point across. So we talked about this end user client that gets installed on the end user workstations that communicates up to our SaaS platform in AWS to get definitions of what printers it's supposed to have and their settings. But additionally, too, we can facilitate printing across the internet securely. And the way that's done is we use our off-network cloud, or off-network printing, or off-network cloud. And that client that's on the end user workstation would know ahead of time that files going to this particular printer need to go off-network. And so rather than printing that file directly to the printer, it can send it up to what we call our external gateway. which is hosted by us in AWS, where we can receive the files that have been sent to us. And then inside the network, there's one of two things: either a internal routing service, which acronym is the IRS. You can blame me for that, but that service is going to be reaching up to the cloud with a WebSocket connection that just remains up, and it's just listening to be told, hey, there's a job for me. And if it gets that communication, then it's going to open up a new connection. It's going to download that job, and then it will push it directly to the printer. So this piece over here on the right side could be that internal routing service, or it could also be an app that actually gets installed directly to the MFP. So in that case, there is no on-prem infrastructure for that second piece, and it is doing that task of reaching up to the cloud. And then same thing, when it sees there's a job for it, it'll download it and it'll just print locally onto that printer.
We have a developer question in the comments. What's it like to write an app that runs on the printer? What language do you write that in?
It's a good question. I believe most of them at this point are Java, but every single manufacturer is different. And so it's actually very difficult to take that in a very holistic fashion, just because each one is a little bit different. But one thing that we did several years ago was to come back around and make sure that the user interface is the same no matter what. So the user experience is going to be universal, but on the back end, it's different by every manufacturer.
Cool. And another question, what happens when the PrinterLogic cloud goes down? Good
question. So I'll talk first about standard printing, and we can get back to this off-network side here. But when we're printing directly from either the end-user workstation or the output management service, we haven't quite talked about yet. If that SaaS platform goes down, we're going to continue to print to any printers that we already know about. And what I mean by that is, on an end user machine, if we've already installed that print queue on their machine, and on the output management service, it's just if we've printed to it ever, I think, essentially, if I recall. But if for any of those printers that we already know about, that we don't have to get information from on the cloud, we're going to continue printing even if it's down. With off network, that's a little bit different, because jobs are flowing through the cloud essentially. So if cloud is down, then that would be a problem. But with that in mind, we've built in a high level of redundancy to those services. Each of the gateways in each of our regions has multiple redundant points, and we also rely on AWS for their forgive me, I'm failing on the availability zones, I think, is that what you call them? Yeah. Yes. So we have redundancy built in from that side as well. So let's see. So that is off network printing.
Hey, Ken, one thing I did want to mention just on the previous question with regards to writing an app for the printer and what language is that? You bring up a good point that the compatibility is just a challenge with multiple print manufacturers that we need to support. So how we've gotten around that and to not have to install software on a printer that could be tedious, at best, is utilizing a mobile app for facilitating that secure release of print jobs. So the way that works, on the screen right here, you see there's a download QR code button. You can download these one by one or in bulk, and it's the QR code that identifies each individual printer. So you would paste one of these QR codes on the printer itself. And then from a release standpoint, I could even show you, or Ken, if you have the Figma thing, if you want to kind of show how it looks.
I don't have it open.
Well, I'll just talk through it then. So instead of having to, let's say, for instance, tap your badge at a printer and then work with the software that's installed on the printer, everything would be done via the mobile app. So the mobile app would have the user authenticated through one of those SAML 2.0 providers that we talked about before. And then there'd be a QR code button on the mobile app that would open up the camera, scan this QR code that you just downloaded and put on the printer. And now we know who the user is that sent the print job and is accessing the mobile app. And now we know which printer they're wanting to release to. So in the mobile app, they'll then see the queue of print jobs that are available for release, select those, and then click release, and then the print job comes out of the tray. So what we're solving there is really two issues. One, compatibility challenges just with the printer and not having to install software on printers, which I mentioned can be tedious at best. And then two, when you do things like badge release on a printer, it carries an additional cost that is not a trivial cost. And, if fixing a badge reader to a printer, these things can be 150, 200 bucks a pop. When you're talking about thousands of printers in an environment, that is a lot of hardware just for badge printers. So this kind of circumvents the cost piece of it, the usability piece of it, and also provides the security and saves on the paper waste and usage that we were talking about before.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's a good
Yep.
additional context on that. So let's switch over. I keep alluding to output management, so I think we should explain a little bit about what that is and how it works, so I can stop alluding and actually just talk about it. So let me make that larger. So output management is all about receiving files that are sent from large applications, like particularly in healthcare, electronic medical records systems like Epic or Oracle Health, and when you're printing directly from an application like that and the job doesn't originate from the end user machine, that processing of the file still has to happen somewhere, right? And so normally that would be on a print server, and we don't necessarily like that, right? And so and neither do our customers, because of the aforementioned issues that we had with them. So with output management, what we can do is we can use our output management service to replace print servers, in particular with Epic. And when we do so, rather than sending those files to a driver that's been installed on a print server, it gets passed to our output management service. And then we use our own library to get that file ready to be sent to the printer. And then in the most basic form, we're just going to send it to the printer. Within the start of that process, there's two ways that we can receive files with this service. The first would be via LPR, line print remote. It's a print technology that's been around since the 90s, and almost anything can send files with it. And then we can also receive files that are sent to us via HTTPS. The most built-in kind of integrated way to do that is with Epic. They have an output management API that allows you to change how print jobs are printed. So rather than going to that Windows print server, it gets sent to us as a post request, and then we receive that file. We're going to look in the attached XML file that Epic sends us to determine who the user was that kicked off the process, what printer the job is supposed to go to, settings like is it color, duplex, etc. And then once we've determined all of that, then we will move on to printing the file. So major benefits of this, for one, you get rid of the need to manage drivers and deploy them. And additionally, too, we offer a much higher level of redundancy than a standard print server. I'll talk about how that's done in the following diagram. And additionally, too, not only do you get the ability to just be able to print from those systems, but you can also use any of the features we talked about, like secure release or off-network printing. And you also get that benefit of it being a completely unified platform now, where you can manage your front-end printing on those end-user workstations and the printing from your EMR from a single platform. And so all the reporting's combined, and everything is managed together. So I mentioned the high availability, which is really important in healthcare, though we have an SAP icon there. But the way that this works is, I'll actually take a step back. So the initial application would kick off that print job. Normally it's going to come to a load balancer first, so that we can have more than one output management service. And once that file is received on the load balancer, it's going to be sent to an available output management service. And we're going to send that file to shared storage that the customer owns, right? So it could be NFS or Samba or Amazon S3. And we'll encrypt the file and save it there. And then we'll also go up and we'll tell our SaaS platform that this file exists. So now that we know that it exists, we pass it to our event bus, which I won't get too into the details on that. But once that event bus knows about the job, it's going to say, okay, should it be printed right now? And if it should, then it's going to pass that message down to and output management service that's in that zone. And once that's passed down there, then once that service is notified that the file is there to be printed, it's going to pull it from storage and then print it. And so what this provides for you is 2 different levels of redundancy. The first is just with the load balancer being able to make sure that a service is available to receive the file in the first place. But the second part, where we send that file to encrypt the file and then send it to storage, is that we make sure that we don't lose the file after it's already been received by us. So if we got that file on service client 1 here, but it went down for some reason, it wasn't available, then we can still print it via the second service by pulling from storage. So there's that 2 levels of redundancy with output management.
We have a service-related question in chat. How is the service deployed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the end user client that I mentioned before, that can be deployed out using any essentially mechanism that you use to deploy software. It's an MSI or an AXE. Same with you can use Jamf or similar tools for Mac. And that end user client, once it's on a machine, it also controls all of the service client deployments that we're talking about. So with this output management service, as long as that end user client was already installed, within the tool here, we would create a service client object. And here, this is the one I'm using right now. You would make sure that it has the correct IP address. And then from there, we would just turn on the services that we want to run. In this case, it would be the API print service. Make sure that it has all of its settings as far as knowing what certificate it's supposed to use and usernames and passwords. And we save that. And then at that point, the next time that the client checks in, it's going to know that I'm supposed to be running a service. It's going to download and automatically install everything that we just configured.
Cool. And we have another question too. So the print file can leave the network. I thought it was mentioned earlier that it doesn't.
Yeah, so the only time that it leaves the network is when you're using off-network printing, and in that case, it's pretty unavoidable because we're sending the file out of your network, right? That's the entire idea behind it. So, what we do to make sure that that's secure, though, when we do use off-network printing, is we allow the customer to use their own public-private key pair. And when a file is sent off network, the first thing we're going to do is we'll generate a symmetric key that we encrypt the file with. And then we use your public key to encrypt that symmetric key. And then that gets sent up through our infrastructure and then down into your network again. And once it's on that network that can reach the printers, your private key will decrypt the symmetric key, which decrypts the job, and then that's printed. So using that paradigm with your own private public key pair, there's no way that we could look inside of that file or do anything with it. So that's how we secure it in those events that we do actually need it to leave the network.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. So a couple other things to mention. Really, I think a couple other things to mention. So the API print service is part of our output management service. And I particularly wanted to share this on this stream because I know there's a lot of developers that join onto this. And so with the API print service, this is a way to enable printing from systems where you can't print normally. And by using our API, right? And so that same output management service I was mentioning before, if I come back up to here, this service can receive files via post request using our API. And to use that, then within your application, you would configure a custom post request with some headers that we specify within our documentation. It's just these here, and when you push that file to us and tell us what a printer we're supposed to print to, we'll just look at that queue name. We'll look at the settings that we've already configured inside of the PrinterLogic console, and then use that to determine what we do with the file, where we send it, how it's altered or changed, and everything else from that side. So we're seeing a lot of interesting use cases where customers are using applications either homegrown or things like Salesforce and anything that has an SDK, and are taking that and then making these custom requests to enable print for those applications. So that's been a lot of fun to see people dig into. Showing a little bit of that real quick. So this is just an example tool that I made to show how this works. I know the text is going to be tiny, so let me bring that up again. And so this is just a basic Python script that is using or that results in this interface. Once again, I'll make that a little bigger. And so there's a front end where you have just a few input fields where you can specify where we should send the file, what file we actually want to send, which I have not chosen yet. So let me send this blank PDF. You can specify the name of the queue that you want the file to go to, and then just some other finishing settings. So from there, we just, I got an error. What did I get? Let's see. Make sure I got everything right. Well, this is the joy of a live demo, right?
Yeah, it's got to go wrong.
Yeah. This was working right before I did it, and I mean, this is the fault surely of my own coding here. But anyway, so I won't troubleshoot that right now, but this kicks off the file just using the post request, as I mentioned. It comes into our service, and then we use our library to convert the file and make sure that it's ready for the printer, right? And so anyway, it's been a lot of fun to see some of our customers start to dive into that. And then the last thing, so the other thing that is exciting that we've been delving into recently is print job archiving. This is a not released feature yet, so you're all getting a little bit of a preview, but the idea for this came from several customers, honestly, where they had either regulatory requirements or they just wanted to have their own visibility into what's being printed by their users. And so they asked for the ability to archive print jobs that their users are sending. So the way that this works is it's still coming through, if I come back here, our output management service first. So the file gets passed into there, and then it prints it, right? But then additionally, it converts that file to a PDF, and then it's going to send it up to our archiving tool. This archiving tool can store things itself, or it can tie into S3 or really any storage mechanism that you want. And then it's going to not only store those files, but also index the different attributes that we pull off of it. So we know, who the user was that sent the file, when it was printed, and we can include steps in a workflow it might be in. And these are just examples. It can really be customized to anything that you need. And just want to include a quick little example of this. So I have this ultrasound sample that I am going to print right now. I'm going to send it to my archival printer. And that will take just a second there as it's processed, and that's going to get kicked off to our service, as I mentioned. And all right, my printer is spinning up, and there we go. So that's been uploaded here as a PDF, and you can see that we now have the same file that I had just printed. It's demo data, so we have a different user than myself, but it still pulls in there, and that's in essence what it's looking like so far. And this is, as I mentioned, this is still being built out, but wanted to share one of our newer features.
Thanks for showcasing here first. We appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly.
And if you're just tuning in, welcome to Howdy Partner, our weekly series on Twitch, where we bring on our AWS partners and solutions hands-on, and their solutions hands-on directly to you. Today we're talking to Ken and Matt, who are showcasing PrinterLogic from Vasion, and they are in the middle of showing us how PrinterLogic is revolutionizing print management in healthcare space.
Awesome.
Back to you.
Yeah. I think probably the last thing that we had planned to really show today was the rules and routing feature. I may have to log back in here. But let me get my authenticator. So rules and routing is the ability to automate a lot of the processes that are happening. And right now it's more print focused, but that's going to spread out to scanning, and we're even investigating faxing as a potential thing to dive into, which is still very big in healthcare. But within a rule, you can configure 3 different attributes. The first would be the trigger that we're watching for, and that's just the event that's going to prompt either our client or output management service to check if there is a rule that applies to this particular job. And then there's a condition that is what we're checking against to determine whether or not the rule applies. And then lastly, an action, which is the thing that we do if the condition applies. And so this is something else that we're ever expanding on as far as what types of automations are available. But just as an example, maybe I'll start with a print job failing. So what we could do if a print job fails is to automatically, if I can spell, automatically redirect a print job to a backup printer. And so what this would do then is I could say if a print job is going to be sent to this HP first floor, maybe even any of these printers at this particular location, and a print job fails when I try to send it to that printer, I want it to automatically be rerouted to a backup, which I shouldn't choose the same one I wasn't going to. But so we're going to automatically send it to this one. But then additionally, too, I want to send a notification email to the user who sent the job in the first place to tell them that their print job is on a new printer. And so from there, then I would just save this. And then that's it, right? At that point, that rule is going to be more or less in play. And then if that print job fails, then it's going to automatically fail over. So that's just an example. Other things that we are looking at expanding on is the ability to convert to black and white or color conditionally. That was a request from a customer where they had after visit summaries and similar documents that were actually handed to a patient, and they wanted that to still be in color and still look really nice because they're giving it to their customer, but they wanted to save on cost by printing everything else in black and white. And if you're doing that on just a single print queue, there's not really a way to dynamically do that without something like this. So you could create a rule that says, if you see a title that says it's a print job summary, then allow that to print in color, but otherwise we're going to convert everything to black and white. So there's a lot of possibilities there, but that's something that is a little bit newer that we're really excited about.
Cool.
Anything else, Matt, that I missed?
I guess the only other thing I'd throw in there, did you want to talk through any of the other integrations? I know they're not done right now, but what we're looking at with other services from the output management as to how we can further look into and process print jobs or index and categorize print jobs? Or is that not the forum for doing that today?
Maybe a little too soon for some of that. But,
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but, no, but, yeah, a little teaser of what's to come.
So, quick question. I know Matt talked about this being a non-sexy issue, but like, what was the aha moment with Invasion where like we can make a difference? Because like I said, I've been doctors all my life, and I always noticed the paperwork, the printing, but it never came to mind that this is a problem that needs solving. Like, what was the aha moment with Invasion that like we can make some headway here?
Yeah, I'd say so. Seeing it for myself for the first time before I chose to join Invasion, it was I never spent time as a print admin or anything like that and managing print servers and print queues, but I got the concept very quickly that this could be a problem. And when I put this in front of my customers and I sat on some demo calls, before actually coming on board at Invasion, and just again, something as simple as changing the way we manage print queues and deploy printers, everyone just on those calls like, where's this been for the last 10 years where I've been struggling with this problem? And in there, you just like almost heard the joy in people's voices of like, shit, I've been dealing with this for forever and suffering silently. And now you're telling me that there's a thing that can actually help me do this. Like this is a game changer. And it just saves so much time. And when we were at HIMSS, customers kept coming up to us and just like, your solution just simply works. It's something I don't have to worry about. It's lessen the burden from our admin support team, and it just works. And we can, take the IT resources that we have that are highly trained and qualified and do other things that are more impactful for the healthcare organization overall.
Cool.
Yeah. I just want to add a little bit to that too. The aha moment for me personally was also at a show, right? And that was in part because I started out as a system engineer, right? So when I talked to customers, it was more at the beginning of their process of getting them to be interested enough in trying it out. But then once they bought, my part kind of died off. And so I didn't get a lot of that, what happened afterwards. And so the first time I ever went to a show, and I had that experience of people coming up to me, it's like, oh, PrinterLogic, this thing saved me so much time, it's amazing. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm selling something that's real here, that's actually making a difference for people. And that was a cool experience for me.
That's always cool. Yeah, customer feedback like that. So we've been talking about healthcare. Are there any other industries that are using PrinterLogic besides healthcare?
Yeah, I mean it's universally used. The output management product that I talked about is more vertical focused. Healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, and like shipping and logistics type focus. But the core product of just managing printers and and eliminating print servers and kind of that core piece is really universal to anyone who has, I'd say, maybe more than 20 printers, maybe even less than that. But yeah.
I'm checking the comments, see if any other questions that are related to this.
I see one.
Yeah.
I think the answer is no. Unfortunately, we probably can't get your printer to run Doom.
I'm not seeing it specifically, but I'm sure there's somebody out there. If they're sitting there saying, "Hey, I have this organization, PrinterLogic would help me." What's their first step? How do they get involved with you?
Totally.
How do they try it out?
So printerlogic.com or vasion.com would definitely be a good place to start. There's contact forms where you can, get someone to reach out to you very, very soon. I know in the comments there too, we have a link to signing up for a demo. And so that would be a good way to go about doing that as well. We have people very eager to talk to you. So.
And I think I saw that you have free trials. Can you give us an idea of what's involved with that?
Yeah, totally. So with that, what we normally do, you can technically do it on your own, though, we have system engineers that are happy to get on with anybody to help set up the trial install. Normally that takes, I'd say on average, probably about a half hour to get the base thing going, maybe up to an hour, but it's really not long at all. If we're setting up output management, it can be a little longer because we're having to make changes inside of Epic or Cerner, and it's usually more delay on that side. But it's generally half an hour to an hour to be up and running, and then the standard is 30 days. Though if we often make exceptions if it makes sense.
Yeah, one other plug in there. It's also, a lot of demo environments or a lot of trial environments, they don't transition very well to production. We've purposely built our trial environment it's a full-fledged production environment. And then when you go to transition and want to become, a paying customer, it's as simple as scaling out your license and scaling out the deployment. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to redo any of the work that we did. You're basically getting free professional services during the course of the POC, and then off and running once we confirm all the technical details and that everything is working as expected. So it removes a lot of risk too in that process.
Cool. Definitely.
And how can viewers connect with you?
So I would say the easiest way is to visit our website. When you go to request a demo, what that actually does is you put in the organization you're with and some of your contact info. That will enable you to book a calendar or book a meeting directly on the calendar of one of our account executives that is aligned to your region and your vertical. So that's the easiest way to get in touch with us, and that'll align you to the right team that can help you with the trial, give you the demo like we walked through today, and answer any additional questions going forward.
Okay. And I know both of you are LinkedIn. Would you be against sharing your LinkedIn information with our viewers?
No, not at all.
One thing you touched on just briefly, and it's kind of adjacent to the opposite side of it, scanning capabilities. Is this something that's part of PrinterLogic?
Yeah. We did talk about that. So we do have scanning capabilities. The exact details of what's released yet is I'm a little iffy. Matt, are you more familiar maybe than I am on what's available right now?
So we do have, just as a kind of generic statement, it's scan to cloud services is the big thing that we're doing now. So think of OneDrive, Google Drive, SharePoint Online, all those kinds of services that you want to get data into. The challenge is it relies on our control panel application to get pushed to the printer, and we have certain print manufacturers that we can support right now and certain ones that are still being onboarded. So it's not a ubiquitously available solution at this point, but we recognize the fact that the scan to portion of it in conjunction with some of the workflow and automation tools that we have, that was a separate call previously to this one. That's an ingestion point where we're managing the printer. We can push that software application to the printer and then use that as a capture point to kick off workflows through digital formats.
Nice. So it sounds like somewhat available, but we should be expecting more features coming in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Get in touch if you have those needs for capabilities to have scan to Cloud X service, whatever it may be. Fill out that request form, get in touch with the right person, and we can dive into the details of what's possible now and what we're building in the near term.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you both for coming on the today's show. I didn't know how much of a problem printing was with organizations, but it makes sense.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
Big problem.
it makes sense, and the solution is very innovative and and I can see how it much needed, especially in healthcare field. I myself, I could see how something would be useful. I was a former teacher, and we had a lot of papers and printing and stuff. So I can imagine school districts getting on board with this too. So, but I thank you for your time. Simon, you have any closing remarks?
Nothing in particular. It's definitely an interesting demonstration. I appreciate it, and appreciate you guys coming on and sharing all your knowledge. And yeah, there's a lot more to printing than the average person sees. So.
That is definitely true.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for the time in the audience. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. And for our viewers, please remember to fill out that survey and tune in next week where we talk to another AWS partner on here, Howdy partner. Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.